What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Team Chat Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Jarrett Wilson, joined by Rachel Mogan.
Buongiorno.
Buongiorno to you as well. How are you this fine day?
I'm doing okay, and I say only okay because I realized too late that I remembered to take off all of my nail polish except for one thumbnail that I missed. No. And now it's all like patchy and awkward. So,
but or conversely, a new fashion trend that you've just launched.
It doesn't know.
You don't know. People could take off.
No, it's not gonna. It looks bad. I appreciate the enthusiasm, but
just not gonna happen.
So please put your condolences in the comments for my tragic death of fashionness.
Fashion faux pas?
Sure.
Nail faux pas?
Yeah. A nail paw.
A nail paw.
Anyways.
Well, thanks for joining us on this episode of Team Chat Podcast, a video game show where we talk about the games we love, the games we hate, and everything in between. New episodes come out Tuesdays, 9 a.m. Central Time, and you can listen to those on podcast services around the World Wide Web, such as Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and others. The show is also available in video format on YouTube, so head over to youtube.com/teamchatpodcast where you can watch all those episodes. You can also find us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We also have a Discord server for you to join. Links for all that are in the description below. And finally, you can head over to patreon.com/teamchatpodcast if you're really loving what we're doing and creating for you each and every week, and you can support the show. Monetarily speaking. And in return, we will give you perks like getting the episodes early before their general Tuesday release, access to a private channel on our Discord server, and a new show that we're still promoting and putting out there. Episode 2 actually came out today on the day of this recording for our patrons of Team Chit Chat, where we talk about things outside.
We should have named it for this particular one, we should have named it like Team Spill the Tea Chat Podcast because your particular...
It was fiery.
It was fiery. It was fiery Star Wars opinions.
That's true.
Who doesn't want to hear those?
And you got to check those out. Team Chit Chat, coming soon. Out now for patrons, coming soon for the general public.
I mean, you can't argue back if you don't listen, so...
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. You're going to be constantly wondering what I was talking about. But if you can't do that, that's no big deal. We totally understand. We're just glad that you are here listening to the show, but we would really love it also if you could give us a review, a rating, tell all your friends, share us on social media. That would be incredibly helpful and huge to us, and we thank you all for listening and enjoying the show. Before we move into our normal things, we have another thing I'm trying to be better about doing. Is asking everyone for questions. If people have, our listeners for questions that they want us to answer on the show and everything. And so I did such a thing before we recorded today, and my beautiful bride Samantha wrote in a question for us, basically, and she was asking, who would win in a fight? Donkey Kong versus Mario, and then conversely, Luigi versus Diddy Kong.
Okay, so the second one, at least I feel in my heart, is much easier. Luigi versus Diddy Kong.
It's
Luigi, obviously.
Really?
Yeah, really.
Oh, I thought you were going to go Diddy Kong.
I mean, like, if you're talking about Smash rules, sure, Diddy Kong probably wins. He was top tier for a long, 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 long time. But if you've ever looked into Luigi's eyes and, like, into his soul, you see the demon that sleeps within.
He's seen all those ghosts.
He's seen all those ghosts. Who's to say he hasn't been absorbing them into himself this whole time?
And granted, while he does have his own game series with Luigi's Haunted Mansion, he's always still like the very much sidekick. Diddy Kong, on the other hand, has had Diddy Kong Racing, a wonderful racing game. He's also been, featured in all the Donkey Kong games and everything.
But how does that help him win in a fight?
He's got that peanut gun bazooka thing that he shoots. Like Donkey Kong 64, I loved his like dual barrel peanut.
Yeah, and Luigi's got the vacuum cleaner to just instantly suck those up before they can even get to him.
They shoot too fast. The velocity's too high.
That's
physics.
Fake news. Not true. Anyway, so yeah, Luigi. He would definitely win the fight.
I gotta go with Diddy Kong on that one. That's just me. Well, I mean, but we know where this is going to stand because now we're moving on to Mario and Donkey Kong. Who wins there? Mario's got fireballs.
He does have fireballs in certain
situations. He can also have a full plate suit of armor in certain situations. Metal Mario. He can also be Tanuki.
Yeah.
He's got a pretty wide moveset.
Yeah, I would probably say Mario.
I would too. Donkey Kong's massive and powerful and a beast of a creature.
But he's also like nice and kind of goofy. Well, Mario's nice and goofy too. But
he's a plumber, for God's sake.
Yeah. Well, anyways, I still think Mario would win.
So Mario, and then we're split. Mario would win versus Donkey Kong. We're split on Luigi versus
I think
Diddy.
Luigi could beat all of them, like at the same time.
Just unleash that anger that he feels from being constantly pushed to the side.
Release the beast. I think that if he like really accessed his inner rage, that he would be unstoppable.
You know what? I don't know if I can necessarily argue with that.
Yeah, you can't because Luigi will kill you.
It just adds more rage. If you're like, no, your rage isn't even enough to win in a fight.
Is that really how you want to die? Killed by Luigi.
But we should, though, to get in a scientific answer for this question, we should have like a Smash tourney at some point where we like play just between those characters against those characters to see who would win.
I guess
could we even computer like AI it?
Yeah, so I was going to say, I think the most equitable way to test that would be to just make all of them like max level amiibos and then make the amiibo fight each other in a CPU tournament. Actually,
and then we cast the fight as if it was,
exactly.
I think we should do that.
I will say that noted YouTuber AlphaRad has built his entire platform on that.
Well, that's fine for AlphaRad to do. We can do it as
and
a
it's
one.
Very funny.
I'm not trying to step on his toes. I'm just saying we can try it for this one little thing.
Okay.
Before we jump into the main topic of the day, or the main two topics of the day, we got a double one for you. We actually have quite a bit of news coming out. So in our moment with Mogan. So let's jump into that section. Find out what's coming out soon.
Yeah.
And these other news stories.
So end of January is much more stacked than the beginning of and middle of January. So Moons of Madness comes out for PlayStation 4 and Xbox One on January 21. All on January 23, we have Kingdom Hearts 3 Re:*Mind. That's exclusively for PlayStation 4. That is a formal expansion / DLC, whatever you want to call it, for Kingdom Hearts 3. Mm-hmm. Mosaic for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Switch is also coming out on the 23rd. Oddworld Stranger's Wrath HD comes out for Switch. Rugby 20 for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC. The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners for PC only. All of those come out on January 23rd. Journey to the Savage Planet for Xbox One and PC comes out January 28. Kentucky Route Zero: TV edition. I don't know what that is, but hopefully it's about the
Kentucky Route Zero TV edition.
That's a lot of confusing words altogether. That's for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Switch on January 28th as well. I assume it's got to be a racing game, right?
What is it? One more time? Kentucky
Route Zero TV edition.
Zero.
Is it like a game show? Anyways, you look that up. And then closing out the month is Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire for PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, January 28th. Warcraft 3 Reforged comes out for PC January 28th as well. And finally, Through the Darkest of Times for PC on January 30th. Lots coming out there at the end of the month.
Very nice. All right, so I'm trying to... TV edition. Okay, here we go. So Kentucky Route Zero this is from its Wikipedia article, is a magical realist episodic point-and-click adventure game created and published by indie developers Jake Elliott, Tomas Kaminski, and Ben Babbitt under the name Cardboard Computer. It was actually released in 2013, so this must be like a re-release.
Oh, okay.
I guess.
What I heard is the word episodic, and I'm about to have a seizure.
And you're out. Okay. But it says, so the game is separated into 5 acts following the narrative of a truck driver. So close. It's like a truck.
It'll be just like Dream Daddy. Ice Road Paranormal Investigator Truckers.
That's right. Named Conway and the mysterious people he meets as he tries to cross the fictional Route Zero to make a final delivery for the antique company for which he works. Huh. Interesting. All right. Sure. The first act was released in 2013, so it's actually a few years old at this point. But so yeah, it must be like a remastering re-release of that.
Well, you don't get many games about Kentucky, so...
Take them when you get them.
Huzzah, I guess.
So one of the first stories that we want to talk about, this one broke today from a Kotaku article, that Horizon Zero Dawn is reportedly going to be brought to PC, which is really cool.
So I will go on ahead and say I didn't know it already wasn't for PC. I kind of assumed that it was.
Well, because Sony's exclusives usually stay Sony exclusives. Like they don't move to any other things. And that's what kind of makes this a fairly landmark thing. But also, in this article, it does talk about more in the original Kotaku report by Jason Schreier. It talks about how this is a big step because like I said, they normally don't do this. Death Stranding is also going to be coming to PC at a later date, but it's kind of... But this one for a exclusive that's been out for a few years already, came out in 2017, but we're looking at it in just being like, could this finally be another step in the direction of moving away from total like console exclusivity. At the very end of this article, Jason Schreier talks about how he says, so, quote, "This will be the first big exclusive game from a Sony-owned developer to come to PC. Death Stranding, which launched for PS4 last November and will also arrive on PC later this year, was funded and published by Sony but developed by an independent studio, Kojima Productions. In fact, the PC version of Death Stranding is published by a different company, 505 Games. The French studio Quantic Dream is also independent, had a similar arrangement last year, self-publishing its games Heavy Rain, Beyond Two Souls, and Detroit Become Human on PC without Sony's involvement." And so they share. But so what this does is, okay, so here's the part. That part was a little background that I'd already read. But so for most publishers, the releases of a game on PC would be no big deal. Most video game companies try to put their software on as many platforms as possible. But for Sony, this is a remarkable move. Since the launch of the PlayStation 1 in 1994, just about every game funded and developed by Sony has been exclusive to a PlayStation platform. Sony's PC-focused, massively multiplayer online games, including EverQuest, are the main exception.
Oh my God, EverQuest. That's a franchise that you do not hear about
not
anymore.
Around, really. Sony's strategy has always been to drive hardware sales with software and vice versa. One would expect them to make the same approach with future games on the PS5, which will launch this fall. But so it seems to be a shift getting away from necessarily that mindset of using hardware to sell games. It's going to be more using the games, I guess, to be just driving their sales based more on where you can play them and their availability, which is a different step for Sony.
I think it is a test because it has been 2 years. It's been about 2 to 3 years
almost
since
3,
Horizon
actually.
Zero Dawn
February's
came
when it came out.
So I wouldn't necessarily say that I think this is the thing and we're rapidly going to move away from consoles and exclusivity. I don't think that that's going to happen like immediately or anytime soon. But I mean, I guess it's exciting. Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah. It's. I mean, that's one of our members on our Discord, Fuchsia. She actually said she's the one who posted the article, and I hadn't seen it. And I was like, oh, I will definitely buy this because for one, I only have the base PS4. The PS4 Pro had like upgraded graphics for Horizon Zero Dawn and everything like that, but I haven't seen it. So now getting it on PC where I can really crank up those graphics, get that better frame rate, man, I'm just like, yeah, I'll do this again. I love the game. It's my number 2 game of all time.
You could instantly tank those beautiful frame rates and how smooth it would run? By playing it on Google Stadia. I just really wanted to get like one burn on Google Stadia. Just one more dig in there. Anyway, so that is exciting for PC users.
It's pretty cool.
Will it be available for Mac is the question.
No, it's going to be PC.
See, more hate for the poor Mac users. We can't help it. We got tricked by Apple into buying them, and now we're stuck with them because they're so expensive.
Yeah, you're just not supposed to be.
We're trapped.
There's not gaming machines in any way.
Gaming machines.
Not really.
Poor
not what they're
little
built
Mac
for.
laptops, Mac tops, if you will.
But you had a couple of other stories too that broke recently.
Yeah, so just very recently, not very recently, but Monster Hunter World Iceborne has consistently been selling incredibly well. And I was just reading an article kind of recently about how Monster Hunter World is Capcom's best-selling IP, period. Mm-hmm. And now, thanks to Iceborne being released summer of last year, I think it ticked up total sales of Monster Hunter World from around like the 7 million marker thereabouts to more like 13 million.
Oh, wow.
So in terms of worldwide sales, that's amazing. And it's a really good indicator for Monster Hunter continuing to be a presence in the West, which historically it really has been kind of a niche thing. It's really much more for the Eastern audiences. It's very popular in Japan, but really it's just Monster Hunter World that has managed to get a solid footing in North America, in Europe, those kinds of markets. So this is just really encouraging news to hear that not only was Monster Hunter World already successful at its initial launch, but that Iceborne, being so well received by both fans and by critics alike, clearly made a huge impact in its own right by gaining tons of additional sales, keeping Monster Hunter World relevant, and considering that it's an almost entirely online game for the most part. You can, of course, play it single player, but it's more fun with friends. That's just all really good news, and I hope that this means that sometime in the future, I'm not clamoring for a new one right away, but that whatever next Monster Hunter comes out, that it will hopefully be just as successful in our region.
Right. And that, it is proof that there is a market for it in the U.S. and in other places outside of Japan. And so, like, that is a great indicator that, the next games in the next series will be more available and they'll continue to push out its presence and make its market here grow, which is really exciting.
It is exciting.
And then we also had a little bit of news from Nintendo held a Direct earlier last week. on Pokemon Sword and Shield with some different updates coming out. Oh, it was just Pokemon in general, really. But there were some bigger updates about Pokemon Sword and Shield that we wanted to share.
Yeah, so this is kind of a new move for, I don't necessarily want to say Nintendo exactly, because Pokemon, the games, are made by Game Freak. Mm-hmm. So I don't really know immediately whether or not this is a decision more by Pokemon or more by Game Freak. But Pokemon Sword and Shield are the first Pokemon games that are actually going to get DLC. Formal DLC. So you may remember so let's see here. Oh, it is Game Freak. Never mind. All right, so this comes from an article from The Verge. So it says, Game Freak announced expansion packs for Pokemon Sword and Shield. The first of these expansion packs, called Isle of Armor, is set to launch this June, so summer of this year. The Crown Tundra will follow in the fall. So we're actually going to get 2 DLC packs pretty shortly, one after the other. Mm-hmm. In addition to new rivals, clothing, and areas, the expansion pack will also introduce a new co-op, legendaries, and a wider Pokedex. So, there was a big brouhaha when Pokemon Sword and Shield were in development, and of course upon release as well, that the Pokedex was radically cut down for Pokemon Sword and Shield, which many fans were understandably very upset about. So
because it removed a lot of favorites, right?
It removed a lot of favorites, which really is, I think, pretty unacceptable. So the fact that they are expanding the Pokedex again is really good news. I think it is still kind of BS that we're having to pay for it in the form of DLC. Mm-hmm. But I guess it's better than nothing, ? Anyways, for most games, this would be standard news, but for Pokemon, it's nearly revolutionary. So it does go on to say, Pokemon moves at a glacial pace when it comes to major changes, taking roughly 2 decades for traditional RPG experience to land on a console, the Nintendo Switch, and blah, 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 blah. So the point is, Pokemon being brought into the modern age in such a big way in the form of having actual paid DLC, because I think it's going to be $30.
$30. Yeah, you're right. I saw that.
So $30 for these big expansion packs. I'm not clear on whether or not that will be for both of them or for one at a time. I hope it's for both. I hope it's for both the one that come in June and in fall. The article may have...
like a season pass kind of thing.
Yeah. Oh, actually, they are calling it a season pass.
Okay.
So that
would make sense
then
that would be for both if you're paying that.
Anyways, so the point is, Pokemon used to release kind of in different sets. You know how you would get Pokemon Gold, Pokemon Heart Gold, Pokemon Silver, Pokemon Soul Silver. So you would basically have to buy an entirely new game that was still essentially the same game, but you were paying full game price for the next installment.
Interesting.
Even though in terms of the gains made between Heart and Heart Gold, they were very small. I mean, it was really kind of just like microns of difference, but, for diehard fans, it was everything.
Right.
So the fact that we are now getting actual expansions as opposed to just entirely new versions of those games, I think it's a move in the right direction, and I think it's a really smart move for Pokemon.
Well, and also cheaper for the consumer.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Then, so that you're not having to buy $60.
Now, to be fair, Game Boy games and Nintendo DS games were never $60.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
Actually, is that true? The more recent
not
Pokemon
having not owned
ones,
one, I'm not sure on
the
that.
The more recent Pokemon for like the 3DS, I think they may have been like at least $50 or $60. So I guess that is still true. But then again, Switch games are like $70.
They're $60.
I don't know how much.
They're normally $59.99.
I don't know how much money costs. I just roll up to the Best Buy and slap someone and tell them to bring me my games. and
they bring it out to me forthwith.
Forthwith, exactly. Upon a silver platter. And then I leave without paying, and they're like, "What just happened?"
We don't know. I think she didn't. She stole that.
Sorry about my thievery.
So the 2 big topics we have for you this episode is a lot of big news has been happening. A lot of 2020 is kicking off in terms of we're seeing again that people are starting, or at least Sony in this case so far, are leading the charge and not being at E3. So we're already kind of getting changes up there again, like what we saw last year, where both Sony wasn't the only person. They weren't at E3 2019 last year, but they weren't the only ones. Nintendo and EA also were not present at E3 last year, but
they weren't.
They weren't technically. Air quotes.
Oh, right. They phoned it in, right?
No, they like Nintendo does their Treehouse, which is essentially a big direct, and then EA does EA Play, which take place like right at the same area as they take place in Anaheim with E3, but they're not technically a part of E3.
Right.
But Sony, though, for the last 2 years, or for 2019 and now in 2020 are not going to be there at all. So the main reasons, though, that they gave that on a gamesindustry.biz article talks about that what they said, though, last year they said their slate of games that they were going to be releasing and talking about hadn't changed that much from the previous E3 because they had revealed all of their big exclusive games for the remaining life cycle of the PS4. But now we're getting close to the PS5 reveal. And so you would think they would want to take advantage of E3's stage and presence and everything to make that their big reveal of the PS5, but that doesn't seem to be the case. So this is an article, PlayStation will not participate in E3 2020 by Christopher Dring. And so what they say is the firm told GamesIndustry.biz that it does not feel the vision for the event is right for what it had planned for this year. Instead, it will attend hundreds, in quotes, of consumer events to showcase upcoming games for PS4 and PS5. And so...
Interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's more cost efficient.
I mean, I'm sure it is to maybe host
so?
your own event rather than joining up to E3. I obviously don't know what those costs are necessarily.
Well, it said attend conferences, not host their own events.
Well, they are. I mean, you would imagine. I would think they would have their own event for the reveal of the PS5. Then after that, they would go to other conferences, probably like Tokyo Game Show, Gamescom, I'm sure, and stuff like that. Like I would imagine they would have a presence at those events. But it's interesting that E3 is kind of not holding the sway and power over the industry that it once was as like the big go-to event. It still is in a sense, but it is starting to have its detractors where it's not as powerful or as like the end-all be-all event that you showcase your games at. So what's really interesting then, though, is how does this affect what they're going to do with the PS5 and the PS5 reveal? David Jaff on Twitter, he was the creator of God of War and the Twisted Metal series. He's no longer with PlayStation anymore or with Sony, but he still has a lot of know because he was with them for so long. He tweeted earlier that apparently is going to be coming. The PS5 reveal will be in like the next 4 weeks. So
really?
Yeah,
the full reveal?
The full reveal. So probably sometime in February. Found this on a comicbook.com article. And so his tweets were, PS5 reveal is less than 4 weeks away. Sony knows hardcore gamers are hanging on every scrap of info and know that just because Microsoft dominates the conversation at the moment with the reveals of the project with Xbox Series X and other things like that.
It's called Project Scarlet. I'll never let it go.
That's an easy thing to change when they are ready to reveal, assuming the reveal is good. And he says, in another tweet, he says, I want to say it's the worst kept secret in games right now, February reveal like they did for the PS4. So, with that in mind, why would they not choose E3? Do you think it would be because they're looking for more control over the event so they can hone the message and not it be like lost? I mean, it wouldn't necessarily, I don't feel like it would be lost in the E3 conversation necessarily because E3 is always an event like that. You're going to get all the big stories out. But my big takeaway from that is that they want it to be their own event that they can control in every aspect and potentially have more time for like developers or journalists and people who are attending their eventual reveal event to really have more time for hands-on other than just being like, here's your allotment of time while you're at E3 trying to see all the other things that there are. Here, come to our singular event, focus on it, get your, play some of our games, play Godfall, the new, or whatever they're going to be having on it. Play our current gen games because hopefully they've, all about officially confirmed, I guess, that backward compatibility is going to be a thing. So like here, try Horizon Zero Dawn on the PS5, see how well it plays. See the graphical improvements that the system and the power of the system of the console give to games like this. Like check out the fast load times that they've talked about are going to be a thing. So
Can they fix the load times on Anthem?
God, that'd be great, right?
Wouldn't that be funny?
Or really because like even Jedi Fallen Order had long load times and everything. So getting to a place where those aren't as big of a deal, I understand why they're necessary because these games are big and massive and they require some loading time to get them to look so pretty. But still though, it's one of those things. It's like if having that little bit of time sweetened up will be nice. So that's kind of how I feel. Like that's would to me seem to be the main thing of this. They're wanting it to be a more hands-on exclusive where you're not inundated with so much other news at the same time. You can really like soak in and revel in all the joys of the PS5.
I mean, realistically, I agree with all of that. I think that probably is their motivation. I do think it's a matter of them wanting total control over their own events, which is very understandable. But in wild speculation and conspiracy land.
I like that.
And it's not necessarily, it is speculation. It's not a conspiracy. It's just my personal kind of opinions on E3 is it has felt like more recent E3s haven't been very impactful in terms of, how excited people used to get about E3 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that probably just has to do more with market trends and how people have changed in how they get their news. Because now it's so easy to find all of this information at any given time. Even if you miss E3 as it goes on, 12 hours later, 6 hours later, an hour later, some website is going to have an article that concisely summarizes everything that happened at E3. The trailers are going to go up on YouTube, and you're going to be able to very easily access anything that you missed. So it's not really as big of a deal anymore, I don't feel like, to actually be live at E3 unless you're just really excited about it and you like those kind of events, which a lot of people do.
I'd love to go to E3 at some
point. On
the
other hand, I also kind of wonder if it's like, and this really has nothing to do with Sony. It's more just in broad context. I feel like there have been a number of scandals at E3s over the years of games being promoted that then turned out to be wildly different than what the final product was. It almost in kind of like a bait and switch, like, here's what we're going to give you, but here's what we actually give you.
Because you're getting like the pre-rendered, gorgeous-looking 4K trailer.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and then
you get
what
to the
comes
game,
out actually, you're like,
Yeah.
I think we've been bamboozled here. And that's those kinds of snafus, we'll call them. Those kinds of snafus are really hard to hide nowadays because everything is so public. So I kind of wonder if just E3 is losing relevance because people, I at least really kind of every trailer that I see at E3, I assume it's not real. That's genuinely, I'm like, okay, cool.
Because it's like they're just trying to show it off and get people excited.
They're just trying to get the hype train going and show things off. Really, the only people that I trust to display products that I think are probably accurate are Nintendo, because usually whatever you see in a direct in some way, shape, or form does wind up being what you get later down the line.
Right.
The big difference for that would be the technical trailer they released years ago for the GameCube wound up not being the game that was released. It was Wind Waker, but that was literally like 15 plus years ago.
Yeah, that's right.
We can forgive them. So I just feel like people don't really have as much, I would say, faith in EA, because so many games that are hyped, E3, did I say EA?
Yeah.
I meant E3. I feel like people have just sort of lost, at least I have, I've lost faith in what I see at E3 because I assume that none of it is real. Until the game comes out and until it's actually proven to be what they're saying it is, I just kind of don't believe them.
And I get that because it is just so much, sometimes even like still like a working concept, but here's our first trailer kind of thing. Yeah, it very much can change and things can change. And then not to mention, games will be announced and then it still be, 2-3 years later, like Biomutant, the one game that I keep, that was 2 years ago, E3,
Metroid Prime
3 years ago, E3,
mark?
and we still have seen nothing else from this game.
So sometimes it's like, why are you even telling us now? Why wouldn't you just keep it under your hat and then let everybody know a year before it comes out and it's coming out for sure. Even if it gets delayed, at least for sure fiscal year 2020 or whatever.
Right. And two, also speaking of scandals outside of that, it did reveal after last year's E3 that they're I can't remember if it was like attendee list was pretty much like hacked.
Yeah, their data and privacy.
Yeah, data and privacy.
Terrible.
That's what I was looking for. And so all this information got out, and they did not handle the situation well.
They didn't. Yeah.
And so I know that kind of left a bad taste in its mouth and everything. So,
for sure.
But to your point, going back about the trailers readily being available on Twitter, not even or in an article, it's like you don't even have to wait for that sometimes. Like the individual trailer itself will then be published, say by Microsoft, you'll see the new trailer for Halo Infinite as soon as it finishes playing on the live stream.
Because it's not like they're going to wait. They're not going to wait until E3 is over and then put all of that stuff out. They're trying to get that hype going. Yeah. So there's just not as much... I just don't think there's as much of a demand for a big platform like E3 anymore. And it's not that I think that it's a good thing that it stay or go. I'm really kind of ambivalent about it either way. I do think it's fun. I think events are always fun. It gets people excited. Everybody's like jazzed about it. And I love the crazy performances that come out of it sometimes. Like, here's this car, radio silence, boo.
Keanu Reeves, you're breathtaking. All that great stuff. You can't say those moments aren't great.
Sometimes you do get some really good moments out of it, but those really don't have anything to do with the games.
Right.
They're just for fun. It's just fun, like weird live performance art, and you're like, what are they doing?
Yeah.
So anyways, I just those are my feelings on it.
Right. No, I agree. I agree with all that stuff. I hope that these bigger conferences that people can go to and attend in person would stick around, because like I said, I'd love to go to something like E3 eventually, but obviously too, as things change and you can just watch these live streams usually from the comfort of your own home, but that's still not the same.
And actually, I do think that I didn't even think of it until now, but I do think that other competitor conferences are kind of eating into E3's dominance, because E3 really kind of used to be the event, at least in North America. But we have more in recent years seen big gains in the PAX, like PAX Southwest or whatever.
PAX South, that's actually
PAX
this weekend.
East. Oh my God, is it really?
Yeah,
so that's what I'm talking about. Like all of these.
It's just not,
oh my gosh.
Not in the cards today.
The point is,
this year.
So the point is that there are a lot of other regional conferences popping up that are getting a lot of their own good positive buzz, and they're getting really high attendance rates. And I'm sure that is realistically eating into E3's market share.
Right. And like the ones I mentioned earlier, Tokyo Game Show, Gamescom, and then Paris Games Week and stuff like that. So there's these game shows, again, to your point, it's no longer just E3. It's like the beacon.
When is CD Projekt Red going to make Poland the hub of gaming and games?
God, that'd be great, right?
Poland is so fun and cool, and more people should be interested in it. Yeah. CD Projekt Red, sponsor us for a press tour visit conference?
Yes.
We will make a tiny conference, and it will be
just
one
us.
room, just us.
We'll talk to you, see how you do your thing, and we'll love it. Every bit of it.
Sell water bottles, question-mark? Anyway,
Interns for a day?
Yeah.
Sure. Whatever. Let us know. But speaking of CD Projekt Red, that's actually a wonderful transition into our second topic, which is, along with all these other news stories that have been coming out that we've already talked about, there has been a steady stream of game delays that have been announced, starting pretty much in really October of last year.
Yeah. And my opinion on all game delays is, thank God. I'm never upset about a game delay. Like that old adage from somebody who's quoted, it actually may have been Miyamoto.
It is. I actually just saw it, yes.
Yeah, Miyamoto's quote about like, if you release a bad game, it's bad forever. But if you delay a game, it's good. That's a very oversimplification of his clearly much more eloquent words. So Miyamoto, don't at me.
I actually just saw this earlier today, and I was like, "Oh man,
my bad, Miyamoto. I'm sorry I've besmirched your stellar reputation." And that was not sarcasm. He does have a stellar reputation. He's a gem of a man.
Let me see if this pulls up real quick. A delayed game is eventually good, but a rushed game is forever bad.
There we go. Yeah. So much more concise and makes a lot more sense than what I said. So sorry about that.
But so these games, like I said, they've been steadily being delayed. We had the first big push of these games being delayed was back in October, with Ubisoft announcing that they were going to push back several of their titles. And this was on October 24th, and those broke. God and Monsters, the one set in ancient Greece, kind of seemed like a tie-in to Assassin's Creed Odyssey in some way, or very similar themed. It was originally released for February, going to be released on February 25th of this year. And all three of these games, they haven't announced when the new date will be. They're just kind of indefinitely pushed for a little while. So that's Gods and Monsters, Watch Dogs Legion, which I can understand a little bit more on this one, because this one seems like it's going to be, not saying that God and Monsters and the other one, Rainbow Six Quarantine, aren't, but the goal of what they're trying to do, where every NPC could then become playable and recruitable.
It's just a massive game.
That feels like that's going to be a massive game. And if that's a very new mechanic that hasn't really been, that to my knowledge has not been done in a game before. And so that is going to take a lot of refining and a lot of fine tuning to get it right.
Because the threat there, at least in my mind, is repetition.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you have that many people that you can interact with on such a high level, if you kind of eventually start to notice that every sixth person you talk to is a lot like one you talked to before. Gamers will very quickly get tired of that, and rightfully so. So at least when I think about it, and a game of that scale of what they're trying to do, the more time they have to put as much variety in it as possible, I think will highly benefit them.
Oh yeah, definitely. Another one that I made like a list of all these ones that are coming out, and this one I actually missed that it got delayed, and I have to correct what things I talked about in the previous episode where we talked about our most anticipated games. Ori and the Will of the Wisps.
Did it get delayed?
It was delayed.
No kidding.
From February 11th to March 11th. So only a month.
Oh,
and it was
I
actually
missed that too.
It was announced at the Game Awards, and that I think is why
I didn't even
I totally missed it. Yeah.
I was so excited. I didn't even like see the delay.
Well, because they showed off it in a trailer, and then at the end of the trailer they were like March 11th and everything.
So I'd already passed out by that point
because of how cool it is and amazing.
The soundtrack, so
right?
I blacked that out.
Speaking of the soundtrack, Gareth Coker released some teases of them recording the soundtrack, and oh my god,
yeah, it's pretty astonishing.
I actually did pre-order the collector's edition of that because it's going to come with the soundtrack.
Does it come
and
with
a lot
your
of other
own
collectibles.
like little floating wisp?
I think it does. I don't remember everything
is
it
it
came with, but I
alive?
remembered it was like, oh, no.
Well, that's
but
what I was asking.
Oh, sorry. No, it might be like a replica of one, but it comes with the soundtrack, which I was obviously like, I'm going to buy the soundtrack anyway. Might as well just pay a few extra bucks and get it all in one
we'll
cool
have to
little
put
neat
that one on the
package.
wall.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So that one was being pushed. Square Enix, the other big ones, announced that they are pushing back the releases of Final Fantasy VII Remake and the Crystal Dynamics' Avengers game.
Yes,
and
the other one too, Crystal Chronicles Remake.
Oh, I didn't see that one.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that Ark mentioned it to me. At least I'm quite certain that Crystal Chronicles, or was it Tactics? I'll look it up. You keep doing what you're doing.
So Final Fantasy was pushed from March 3rd to April 10th, so not a huge push there. But Avengers was pushed from May 15th to September 4th, which seems a little bit more like, so there's obviously some bigger things there that they're trying to track down. But then the biggest one that I think not necessarily shocked people, but I was surprised a little bit by the duration of the extension of the release date is CD Projekt Red did announce today on January 16th that they are delaying Cyberpunk 2077 from its April 16th release date to September 17th.
And before we expand on that, it was Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles Remastered.
Cool.
That one is getting delayed to summer 2020. So Square Enix is delaying a lot of games. And, let's talk about Cyberpunk first and then circle back to Final Fantasy.
Sure. So Cyberpunk, they released a tweet, and this is one of those things, because this wasn't, I feel like Cyberpunk just handles these things really well. Like, when you bought those Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, you had like a note from them thanking you for playing and all this other stuff. I just really love how they handle press releases and just their releases and games in general. But so they tweeted out this message saying, "We have important news regarding Cyberpunk 2077's release date we'd like to share with you today. Cyberpunk 2077 won't make the April release window, and we're moving the launch date to September 17th, 2020. We're currently at a stage where the game is complete and playable." I like that they say that. I like that they point that out immediately. But there's still work to be done.
They don't say to what degree of playable.
Well, but then they do say, but there's still work to be done. Night City is massive, full of stories, content, and places to visit. But due to the sheer scale and complexity of it all, we need more time to finish playtesting, fixing, and polishing. We want Cyberpunk 2077 to be our crowning achievement for this generation, and postponing launch will give us the precious months we need to make the game perfect. Expect more regular updates on progress as we get closer to the new release date. We're really looking forward to seeing you in Night City. Thank you for your ongoing support. So, for one, I just like that that we didn't hear this news, I guess, really from like a Kotaku or IGN or Polygon release. It was like this more like thought out. I love that they stated that the game is playable, like it's done, but we really want to make it. Really want to make it right, and that kind of seems to be the overall message of all of these delays. Before we move on to this next part, though? What were you wanting to talk about with Final Fantasy VII?
Yeah, so with the Final Fantasy VII delay, first of all, it is a much shorter delay. They gave it 6 weeks?
Like a month.
About a month to 6 weeks of a delay.
March 3rd to April 10th.
April 10th. Yes, that's a really small window of an extension, which almost makes me more nervous. What could they possibly fix in 4 weeks?
That's right. We were talking about this.
Yeah, that makes me a little bit more nervous. So I will say that overall, my level of concern is higher for the Final Fantasy VII delay, just because it is an episodic type game, which you've already heard my thoughts on that. I don't like it. And
Right.
But to have this like weird little 4-week delay on top of that just seems really strange to me. Their statement was very similar. I mean, I don't want to say verbatim, but it was a very similar style of Square Enix put out an official statement saying we have to put finishing touches and put a final polish on it, which that word polish, it really seems to be like an industry corporate marketing standard for saying some parts of the games are still kind of shitty and we have to
like
fix
bugs
them.
we're trying to take out and fix.
Yeah, so I assume that it is probably bugs, maybe graphic stuff. More so, I think that that's probably the case for Cyberpunk because it is massive and online. So I don't think that Final Fantasy VII is probably experiencing the same issues, as I would assume a game like Cyberpunk 2077. There we go.
I know. Lots of numbers in there.
A lot of numbers. So I'm guessing that their problems are probably much more varied between the two of them than they are similar.
Yeah.
But I'm just really, like, I wish that we knew, what is it? I just want to know, like, specifically for Final Fantasy, what are you... What?
What's polishing?
What in the 4 weeks? I want to know what's happening in that
Yeah.
4 weeks, just out of curiosity. I just really want to know, like, why would you have needed such a small extension?
Well,
I
see,
almost
because
feel
that just
like
really
I would
does
have.
mean to me that comes across as it really is just little things they're trying to fix
and I'm sure that it's a
fine-tune.
good thing. Again, I'm not mad about the delay at all. I just feel like I almost would have had more confidence if they had delayed to summer, because then I would have been like, oh, sure, whatever, that's normal. But like a 4-week delay, I'm like, oh. That's a little startling. I don't know about that. It just makes me feel kind of spooked, like a startled horse in a field.
To be fair, Ori's getting pushed the same amount of time.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird to me.
I just feel like it's to that stage. They're close enough. They knew that if we do release on the original day, we're going to catch flack for these things. See, like, I even think Jedi Fallen Order could have taken another month or so to probably fine-tune and get right. Because, like, in my first impressions, I talked about how it had issues with bad enemy spawn-in time. Like, you'd be going up an area or corridor, and then suddenly people just appear next to you. And you're like, oh, what the shit? And then have to fight them, you know? And it was repeatable. Like, in this one area, it kept happening every time. And so little things like that, like, I'm like, yeah, Fallen Order could have used a little bit more, I think. Another month or so, just to fine-tune these things. I'm not a game developer. I don't know how long those things take to fix.
We have no idea.
I'm just saying for conversation's sake. And so I think it could have taken from that. So that's what I feel like in the cases of Ori and the cases of Final Fantasy. It just gives them that little extra window. Now, in the terms of Cyberpunk, it is like, okay, it's similar to what I was saying about Watch Dogs Legion. It does seem like this is going to be such a big open world, heavy story, heavily based on the random interactions you have with NPCs and different storylines and everything. I mean, if The Witcher 3 is any indication of how expansive that this game will be, it's going to be huge. I think it's crazy, or not crazy in a bad way, but just like very interesting that they're trying to say, and I guess you would always want to promote this as like they want this to be their masterpiece of this generation. But people are already like, Witcher 3, hello, it's already amazing, you know? So it's like, you're going to top that?
Was Witcher 3 for PS3 or was it
4?
It was the 4.
Yeah, it was 4 on Xbox One. And so it's just like, wow, you're going to, okay, like that's a bold claim. So please take all the time you need. And so that's the thing, though, when we're talking about these delays, and as you said as we were jumping into this topic, is this isn't a bad thing by any means. I think us, and I believe the gaming world at large, would much rather take the time, fix the game, have it be right, so that way we don't keep running into these instances of games just literally being not in all cases broken, but that has in many cases that has been the case of broken.
Yeah.
Or just little things like what I talked about in Fallen Order, where I'm just like, you know, the game is great, but it would have been cool if I didn't have to work around these.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering then if this is the industry starting to listen to this, or publishers starting to listen to this and not feeling like they just have to hit these original deadlines that they did. Do you think this is a instance of them listening to the gamers and the game and everything and saying like, yeah, please we don't mind. We're going to buy it anyway, but just please have it be as perfected as you can be. So do you think it's listening to that, or also a sign that the industry is finally starting to take steps in combating crunch?
I hope, my hope is that it's a step in combating crunch.
I do too.
However, I really doubt that. What I assume is happening in the time span of these delays is massive crunch. I strongly doubt that a game gets delayed and then the months leading up to that eventual release are non-crunchy. Mm-hmm. I assume that they are as crunchy as a Nature Oats honey and oat bar.
That is an analogy.
That's an analogy. So my heart wants to believe that that's true, that it's an effort to combat crunch, but I would have to actually hear from someone in the field saying that is the case before I would even really entertain that thought. Mm-hmm. And of course, what I think is probably more the case is maybe, not that they've listened to their customers. I don't think that that's the case of anyone in top spots at video game companies, especially the ones that are repeat offenders. I don't think that that's probably the case. What I do think is the case is when these games launch and there's such bad press around them, it tanks sales. Mm-hmm. I mean, it very noticeably hurts sales, and I do think that that's what publishers listen to. So maybe that's the case of they're more willing to accept these delays from their developers in the interest of profits. But that's
what business is about. So that is probably going to be their number one motivation.
That's all very speculative at this point because we won't really know what caliber and quality these games do eventually wind up being until they release. Mm-hmm. You never know. Any one of the games or many of the games that we've just listed with delays, they could still release and be buggy and not necessarily finished.
Or not even necessarily bad in technical sense, but just bad in other ways.
Yeah, they could just not be good.
Not be fun or something like that. Yeah, no, I totally understand and I totally agree with that. That's just my thing. The part of me that hopes and likes to see good in people and things like that wishes that, yes, it is.
I wish, that's what I hope someday will be the case, that there will be longer windows of time for development because people are willing to wait. People are willing to be patient. And if that means better working environments for the developers, all the better.
Right.
So I hope that will happen at some point. Maybe it's even happening now. Mm-hmm. I just really don't think that that's probably the reality.
Hey everybody, just wanted to make a quick note here. So I was wrong. Looks like crunch is still going to be very much a thing at CD Projekt Red. Literally the next morning, I woke up seeing several articles detailing how the crunch was going to still very much be a thing to get Cyberpunk 2077 out the door. And I felt like with how much I talked and sang the praises of CD Projekt Red that I couldn't let this episode go out without acknowledging that these articles exist and that crunch is still going to exist. We'll definitely talk about it more on a later episode, but just wanted to acknowledge it here so people weren't confused. It was very frustrating to wake up to the next morning, and Mogan and I will share our thoughts in a later episode more on this topic. As far as these delays, take all the time you need. We're going to play these games anyway. I'm still going to play Ori and the Will of the Wisp. Like I said, it's pre-ordered. I'm probably going to be pre-ordering Cyberpunk 2077 as well. Last of Us Part 2 was delayed, but I've got that one pre-ordered. So we're still going to play it.
Yeah,
take your time.
We're still going to play it.
Get the game to the perfect stage that you feel it should be before you release.
Don't be a Fallout 76. Don't be an Anthem. Don't be a Ghost Point Break Recon Clancy Tom whatever it's called.
That is the title.
Is that the name of the game?
That is the title. Okay. That is completely accurate. Yes.
Don't do it.
Do you share our thoughts and opinions on both the E3, Sony stepping out of E3 and our E3 thoughts in general, and our thoughts on these delays, on these game delays? Let us know. teamchatpodcast@gmail.com. Comment on the YouTube page, on our social media. We'd love to talk about it with us on our Discord. We'd love to hear from you all. But before we go, we do have to do our soundtrack spotlight, which we have a submission from Mogan.
Oh boy.
He suggested to us Beastial Beat from Mushi. I had it right before we started recording. Here we go. I'm going to do it again. Beastial Beat from Mushihimesama Futari.
Wow. Dang. I've never heard of that
by
before.
Manabu Namiki, Kimihiro Abe, and Ryu Umemoto.
Okay.
I listened to it before we started. It is very peppy. It's very fast. It's very upbeat tempo of a game. He said, Bro Mogan told us on the Discord that he actually saw the game and was introduced to the game during Games Done Quick.
Indeed.
And became a huge fan of the soundtrack very quickly. From this one song, the soundtrack is amazing and super fun, and you should all give it a listen.
I'm excited for it.
So, again, that is Beastial Beat which will be playing after the close of the episode, which is pretty much now. But thank you, everyone, for listening to this episode of Team Chat Podcast. Again, like I said, please share with your friends, give us a subscribe, write us a review. All those things are great and wonderful. Follow the show on all the social media. Again, that's Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Join our Discord server. Follow me and Mogan on Twitter as well, at JT Wilson, at MoganATX.
We should use reverse psychology. Don't follow us. You're not cool enough. Yeah. Cool kids only. Anyways.
But join us next week for another brand new episode on another fun gaming topic. Until then, stick around for the song.